Shalom, shalom. Before I get started, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahawah, bahasham, Rawchaa Rawchaa Qadash. This the brother Yahawah here with another hopeful edifying lesson to the elect body of Yahawah, bahasham, Rawchaa. This lesson is inspired basically from the book of Isaiah, chapter 47, primarily the virgin daughter of Babylon, right? Which like the title of this article reads, it says Pentagon warns future wars may hit U.S. soil as direct military threats grow, right? So it says future wars, which ultimately that future war is the third woe, World War III, which is World War III in the modern day terminology. And the book of Isaiah 47 calls this place America, Babylon the Great, the virgin daughter of Babylon, which, I always brought out that means this place has never seen warfare penetrated with missiles or anything of that nature by other countries. Wars have never been fought here from outside countries, basically. But that's not no longer going to be the reality, because this third world war, which is the third war, missiles, ICBM nuclear missiles, will be shot and hit America, Babylon the Great, which will make this place ultimate desolation, a place where desert creatures will only live, according to the Bible. No man will inhabit it or live in America after the Third World War, the Third War. So I'm gonna read this title of this article once again. It says Pentagon warns future wars may hit U.S. soil as direct military threats grow. It says the Pentagon's newly released National Defense Strategy warns that future wars may no longer be fought solely overseas, arguing the U.S. military must be prepared to conduct combat operations directly from the American homeland as adversaries gain the ability to strike the United States itself. So they're saying the adversaries of America have the ability to strike the United States itself, primarily, ultimately, those ICBM nuclear missiles, right? It says the strategy released Friday evening elevates homeland defense above all other missions, calling for expanded missile defense, counter drone systems, cyber capabilities, and long range strike forces capable of launching decisive operations from U.S. soil. Pentagon planners describe a global threat environment that is faster, more dangerous, and far less forgiving than the past decades, right? It says the joint force must be ready to deter and, if called upon, to prevail, including the ability to launch decisive operations against targets anywhere, including directly from the U.S. homeland. The strategy states, right? So it says, the joint force must be ready to deter and, if called upon, to prevail, including the ability to launch decisive operations against targets anywhere, including directly from U.S. homeland. So they say more or less they can be operations even on the homeland. And keep in mind that that they gave Qatar a contract to build Air Force base somewhere. I can't remember where it is. Idaho. I'm not too sure. Let me see. Qatar. U.S. Air. It says the primary U.S. Air Force base in Qatar is. Hold up. No. Qatar U.S. Air Force base located in America. Idaho, right? It says based on announcements in October 2025, the United States is hosting a Qatar Emiria Air Force facility at Mountain Air Force Base in Idaho, right? It says so. It's in Idaho. They got a they had an agreement to build an Air Force base. Qatar to build Air Force Base facility in Idaho, USA. Right, so they even saying that they got to be on call against targets anywhere, including directly from the U.S. homeland. Right, so they can be targets within the homeland within America, and they got to be on guard to deter these things. Right, so more or less, what is these sleeper cells? Anything that's gonna that can have capabilities to set off deadly strikes. You know, um, planning some type of destruction. Nuclear destruction. So that's the possibility. Even within America, they got to be able to launch deterrence even within America, right? So that lets this place is no longer safe as people think, you know, and these devils can have crisis acts and things like that happens too, which is already been proven that they can create these false events, uh, false flags to further a goal or an agenda. It says more direct military threats to the American homeland have also grown in recent years, including nuclear threats as well as a variety of conventional strike in space, cyber, and electromagnetic warfare capabilities to add, right? Nuclear strikes, right? So that's why this place, because that's why the people, like it says in Isaiah 47, this is um, Isaiah 47 and 1, it says, "Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin, daughter of Babylon." So that's why it's called a virgin. Why? Because it's never been penetrated with these missiles. It never had any foreign wars fought over here, right? But this is no longer going to be the case. That's why it says I'm gonna read this paragraph once again. It says more direct military threats to the American homeland have also grown in recent years, including nuclear threats, right? As well as a variety of conventional strike in space, cyber, electromagnetic warfare capabilities it adds, right? So that's why this place is called the Virgin Daughter of Babylon. And it says threats to the American homeland has grown in the recent years, right? So this place is no longer going to be that virgin, never penetrated by foreign adversaries. Um, and this place is going to be invaded ultimately by those ICBM nuclear missiles. So from the apostles on down, we've been given warning of this. That people think that nuclear missiles. Some people think nuclear missiles doesn't exist. That nuclear missiles are not talked about in the Bible. They think that America will never be hit by nuclear missiles. They got all these vain opinions and amazing and imaginations out there. But the truth is the truth, and the Lord's word is going to prevail. Like the scripture says, was this is the place that this is the mind state of these people in Babylon the Great. They're as it says um in Luke 21, this is their mind state. Luke 21 and 32, it says, "Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass away until all be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away." Right? So the Lord's words will not pass away. Right? So the words of Yahawah will stand forever. Right? His words are forever. Right? And heaven and earth will pass away. The ruling class and what is tangible, what can be seen in the present, how this world is basically how it appears in the flesh as it is today, will ultimately pass away, right? But the words of Yahawah will stand forever, right? And that's how these people are living in verse 34, right? It says, "Take heed to yourself," right? That's what the Lord basically warning the men of the Lord also, right? "Take heed to yourself, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting, surfeiting, and drunkenness and the cares of this life," right? So that's what the mind state of the people in Babylon the great is. Their mind state is in overindulging in his life, being drunk, with being what? Being influenced by the ways or the activities of Babylon and the cares of this life, man. Their mind state is basically surrounding with the cares of this life, cares of this life, what's going on in their own life, right? The cares of this life, so that they come upon you unawares, right? So that's why this day gonna come upon these people unawares, because they're not watching. They're living their own. They're in their own world, so to speak. They're living their little life, and they're just being unaware. And just like the scripture says, take heed to yourself. Right? Pay attention to what you're doing, what's going on, right? At least at any time, your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and the cares of this life, so that they come upon you unaware, right? So that's the mind state of the majority of the people in Babylon. Verse 35, it says, "For as a snare shall it come upon them that dwell on the face of the whole earth," right? So the day of the Lord is going to come like a snare to these people. And like I said, there's a lot of people out there that think that Babylon the Great, Babylon the Great, which is America, will never be hit by nuclear missiles. Some people are even thinking that nuclear missiles doesn't exist, right? Some people that think that they think is something that's that doesn't even exist. But even this article tells you that um, the threat of America being hit with nuclear missiles and other military warfare devices are has increased in the recent years. It's like, yeah, all right. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of people that believe that, right? So, like, I'm gonna read this paragraph once again. It says more direct military threats to American homeland has grown in the recent years, including nuclear threats as well as a variety of of, of, of conventional strike and space, cyber, electromagnetic warfare capabilities. It adds, right? So this place will be hit with nuclear missiles. Russia and China both field conventional, interconventional, so like intercontinental ballistic missiles that can reach continent, the continental United States, while North Korea has tested long-range missiles that U.S. officials say are capable of hitting U.S. territory. Iran is not believed to possess intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of reaching U.S. soil. Right, so Russia, China, and North Korea have these capabilities of intercontinental ballistic missiles, basically nuclear missiles. Right, it says as a resort, bam, the Pentagon has prioritized President Donald Trump's planned Golden Dome missile defense shield with a focus on defeating large missile barrages and other advanced aerial strikes, while also hardening military and key civilian infrastructure against cyber strikes. Right. So this place is going to be hit, man, with nuclear missiles. That's why they call this place the Virgin Daughter of Babylon. That's why it's called the Virgin, because it's never been hit with foreign wars or anything of that, or any type of foreign wars were affected the homeland of America. But that's going to change. This is Isaiah 47:1 again. It says, "Come down and sit in the dust, O Virgin Daughter of Babylon." Right, sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans. For thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate, right? Because this place is going to be hit with nuclear missiles. That's why it's called the Virgin Daughter of Babylon. It was never affected by any type of foreign wars, fought here, or affected by any type of foreign wars at all, on the ground or anything like that. But that's going to change. It says, "Take the millstone and grind the mill, uncover thy locks, and make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man." Right? That's Yahawah when he comes back. He's not gonna meet these devils as a man. He's gonna be in his new body in a what is it, extraterrestrial angelic force, right? Extraterrestrial angelic force, right? It says, "As for our Redeemer, the Lord Yahawah of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel. Sit thou silent and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms," right? America, which rules over the nations of the earth, Babylon the Great, right? "I was wroth for my people, I have polluted mine inheritance, and given them into thine hand. Thou didst thou didst show them no mercy, right? Upon the ancients had thou verily had upon the ancient hast thou verily heavily laid thy yoke, right? It says, and thou hast said, I shall be a lady forever, so that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, neither did remember the latter end of it. It says, therefore, hear now this, thou that art given to pleasures, right? So that's like what I was talking about in Luke 21. These people are overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and the cares of this life. They're that's what they're doing, living in pleasure. This is the land of pleasure, right? So that's why they care. The cares of this life, what's going on in the world, in their present life. You know, that's what I mean. What's going on in their present life, in their own life, meaning they're living in their own little world, in their own world, so to speak, and they have no concerns about what's really going on in the world. They're living in their own world, right? How they can please the flesh, you know, drunkenness and sufficing. You go on that word sufficing, and just to get a more understanding what it means. Let me see. Um, yeah. Verse 8. It says, "Therefore, hear now this: Thou art given to pleasures that dwelleth carelessly, that say in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. Thou shalt not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children." Right. So this place, you said that word widow means being betrayed. You can the loss of children, because that's being basically abandoned, which that's what the allies are going to ultimately do to America. They're gonna go into this word widow. This word widow, it says in the strong definition, it says a widow, also a desolate place, right? So ultimately, that's what this place is going to be. Ultimately, it's going to be a desolation where desert creatures are going to roam only. Because why? The ICBM nuclear missiles that's going to hit this place, right? Just like this article saying that the wars. What is the title of this? The Pentagon warns future wars may hit U.S. soil as direct military threats grow. Right. So they said future wars are going to hit here, and that future war is ultimately going to be World War III, and this place ultimately is going to be hit by ICBM nuclear missiles, as the article um, verifies as there's a nuclear threat also, and it's going to be a widow, basically a desolate place where desert creatures are going to live only. No man shall live here. A desolate house, right? A desolate place. And also, if you go into the word widow, I think I already looked it up. Let's see. It's like, yeah, I think, let me see this real quick. Forsaken, that's what I think I looked up. Forsaken, I think. You go into the, Salaki, I went to the root word. Also, it says widowed, forsaken as a widow, right? It says in the sense of bereavement, discarded, right? So that's basically what these other nations are going to do to America, Babylon the Great. their allies, pursuant to Obadiah and Jeremiah, I think 49, if I'm not mistaken. Obadiah, that confederacy, you know, book of Obadiah, and I think Jeremiah 49. And you go into this word forsaken. It says forsaken means to be abandoned, deserted, or given up entirely, right? So that's what's going to happen to this place. I mean, but ultimately, that's what's going to happen to this place. But their allies are going to forsake and abandon America too, which going to this term widow, right? He says often applying a deep sense of loss, often applying a deep sense of loss, loneliness, or betrayal, right? So this place, it says, see the word? It says forsaken, betrayal. So that's ultimately what's going to happen to America. They're going to be betrayed by their allies, and they're going to shoot missiles on this place also, as the scripture says. So that's what this word, a desolate place, that's going to be, it's going to be betrayed and ultimately become a desolate place, a widow. And that's why the scripture says, I'm going to read it again. It says Isaiah 47:8. It says, therefore hear now this, thou art given to pleasures, that dwelleth carelessly, that say in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall thou know the loss of children. Because that's how Esau thinks too, right? That their houses shall continue forever to generate. They say, I will not know the loss of children. They think they're going to be here for generation after generation after generation, right? I shall not know, neither shall I know the loss of children. So they think they're going to be here for generation after generation. I think that's the book of Psalms 40. Where is that? Houses to all generations. Oh, Psalms 40. Yeah, Psalms 49. That's what their inward thought is. Psalms 49 and 11 says their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names, right? So America, Babylon the Great is named after Amerigo Vespucci, which is an Edomite, a self-proclaimed white man. And along with the rest of these continents, right? Asia, you know, Africa, all those was renamed after Edomites. But the point was that they said that their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, ever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names, right? They think their dwelling places after all generations. They said that they will neither shall I know the loss of children, right? So they think that they're gonna have people here to dwell in Babylon the Great, their generation after generation after generation, as it says. But it's not. You're gonna know the loss of children. You're gonna be cut off, right? Verse 9 it says, but these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day, right? The loss of children and widowhood, they shall come upon thee in their perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries and the great abundance of thine enchantments, right? So that's what's going to happen to this place. Revelations on, what is the precept is in Revelation. In one day, that's in Revelations too. So like it. Revelation chapter 18 and 8 said, therefore here, let me so like it. this is I'm just more or less get to the point because it's talking about Babylon the Great, which is America. Revelation chapter 18 and 6 says, reward her even as she have rewarded you, and double unto her according to her works, and according to, it's like reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her according to her works, and the cup which she hath filled fills to her double. Right, so that's what's coming. That's 4 times right there. Right, double unto her double. No, that's 2, 4. That's 6 times. Devil. And it's gonna be more than that, man. The destruction of this place. Double unto her double according to the works, and the cup which you have filled to her double. So that's 4. That's 3 different times it's been double. Verse 7 it says, how much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her, for she saith in her heart, I am a queen. We just read that out of Isaiah 47. How much she have glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her, for she have said in her heart, I am a queen, and I am no widow, and shall not see sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord Yahawah bahasham Yahawahshi who judgeth her, right? So that's what's going to come, right? These plagues, and the ultimate plague is those ICBM nuclear missiles. We got to go back to Isaiah 47, where that virgin daughter of Babylon, which is going to be hit with the ultimate plague, is those nuclear missiles, along with these other plagues that's coming upon this earth, which is already here. Right? Verse 9 again, Isaiah 47 and 9 says, but these 2 things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon thee in their perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. Thou hast said, none seeth me. That's how these Edomites think, man. None see what the fuck they doing. Nobody knows what we're doing, For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. Thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee. And thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me, right? So that's how these devils think, right? But these devils going to be betrayed, abandoned, hit with plagues, and that ultimate plague is this nuclear missile fire. Now I'm gonna continue reading on. I had to step out real quick. Yeah, the ultimate missile, the ultimate plague is going to be those missiles. It says, as a result, the Pentagon will prioritize President Trump's planned Golden Dome missile defense system with a focus on defeating large-scale missile barrages and other advanced aerial attacks, while also hardening military and key civilian infrastructure against cyber strikes. Joel chapter 2 tells you none will miss a mark. That's where the missiles are described, right? Which I'm not gonna get too heavy in it, But that's what it's talking about in Hosea. I mean, I said Hosea. Joel chapter 2. Salakia. So that's what it's talking about, right? Joel chapter 2 and 2. It says a day of darkness. Let me see. Because, I'm not trying to make this lesson real long. But I'm going to go ahead. Joel chapter 2 and 1. It says, blow ye the trumpet in Zion and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble. For the day of the Lord cometh, and for it is nigh at hand, right? The day of the Lord. A day of darkness and gloominess. We just read that out of Luke chapter 12, right? I think it was 12. That is going to come upon these people unawares, right? Because they're living in, it's like, they're living in careless pleasure. Might be 21. And surfeiting in the cares of this life, right? That's where that's where this day is going to come like a snare upon the whole world. Because they're people in Babylon, the land of pleasure. They're overindulging in the pleasures of this life. Like Salaki, that's what I wanted to get. Or sufficing, surfeiting. Salaki, I'm gonna come back to Joel too. Uh, Luke chapter 21 and 34. I'm gonna read it out to amplify, right? And I'm gonna go get the definition of surfeiting. It says, "But be on guard so that your hearts are not weighed down and depressed with the giddiness, debauchery, and the nauseous of self-indulgence and in the worldly worries of life, and then that day when the Messiah returns will not come on you suddenly as a trap," right? So I'm gonna read that again. Be on guard so that your hearts are not weighed down and depressed with the giddiness of debauchery and the nauseous of self-indulgence and the worldly worries of life, and then that day when the Messiah returns will not come on you suddenly as a trap, right? So we go on this word suffice, surfeiting. It says giddiness and headache caused by drinking wine to excess. Let's see, get the definition. Let me see what suffice. It says to cause someone to desire no more of something as a result of having consumed or done it to excess. Like I said, overindulging in this life, consume too much of something above in excess, right? Overindulging in this life, right? So basically, that's why these people, they're overindulging in this life and in the land of pleasure, which is Babylon, right? I just want to make that point. I'm gonna go back to Joel chapter 2, because that's the mind state of the majority of these people. It's going to come upon these people unawares. Like I said, a lot of people think these nuclear missiles doesn't exist. A lot of people think America would never be hit with nuclear missiles. But but the Pentagon is saying else. It's saying otherwise. Is that's the major defense. That's the major defense agency of America, which is the Pentagon. They are the military defense system or agency. That's the agency, the headquarters of your military. But these people think otherwise, right? They want to think however they want to think, but your government are saying otherwise. It's something saying something different than what a lot of people think. It says on Joel chapter 2:1, it says, "Blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand. A day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains. A great people and a strong. There have not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to years of many generations." So he's talking about these great people and a strong people. He's talking about the nuclear missiles. It says a fire devoureth before them, right? A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. So it's telling you, it's giving you descriptions of the missiles. A fire devoureth before them. Before it hit, once it hit, it's gonna be missiles. It's gonna devour with a fire. And behind them a flame burneth. That's the the compulsion is being propelled by a missile. It's being propelled by rockets, right? Propelled, right? A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Just like we said in the definition of widow, a desolate place. Babylon is going to be a desolation. Only desert creatures is going to live here. This place is going to be a desert, right? It says the land is as the Garden of Eden. How pleasant it is in America. Look, the great land of America. Look how beautiful this place is, right? The land is as the Garden of Eden before it hit, and behind it after it hit, behind them a desolate wilderness. Yea, nothing shall escape them. So it's talking about the nuclear missiles here, man. They tell you that, even though they talking about this golden dome system, that's gonna be to no purpose, to no effect, right? Joel, we're gonna jump down to Joel chapter. I'm at verse 7. Joel chapter 2 and verse 7 is gonna tell you that this golden dome system that Trump is trying to erect or whatever is gonna be to no avail, to no avail, right? Joel chapter 2 to no effect. Joel chapter 2 and 7, it says, "They shall run like mighty men, they shall climb the wall like men of war, and they shall march every one on his ways, and they shall not break their ranks," right? "Neither shall one thrust another, they shall walk every one in his path, and when they fall upon the sword," right, "they shall not be wounded," right? So that's what it's talking about. So it's talking about the sword, it's talking about these missile defense, this golden defense system is not gonna have any effect on these missiles. They're gonna hit their target. Yes, sir. Just keep reading. I'm just start back at verse 3 and just read down to it. Joel chapter 2 and 3, it says, a fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness, yea, and nothing shall escape them. The appearance of them is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen shall they run, like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains shall they leap, like the noise of a flame of a fire that devoureth the stubble. As a strong people. Yeah, I gotta um, press the stop button by mistake. But yeah, Joel chapter 2 and 5, it says, like a noise of chariots on top of the mountain shall they leap, like the noise of a flame of fire that devoureth the stubble, as a strong people set in battle array. It says, before their face the people shall be much pain. All faces shall be before their face, the people shall be much pain. All faces shall gather blackness, right? They shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall like men of war. They shall march every one in his ways. They they shall not break their ranks, right? They shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall like mighty men of war, and they shall march every one in his way, in his own path, right? They shall not break their ranks, right? Neither shall one thrust another, right? They're not going to collide into one another. They shall not. They shall walk every one in his path. And when they fall upon the sword, this missile defense system, they shall not be wounded. So it's not going to be affected when they come into the area of these missile defense systems. This golden dome, it's not going to affect these missiles. I'm gonna read out the Amplified, right? Verse 7 out the Amplified says, they run like warriors. They climb they climb the wall like soldiers. They each march straight ahead in line, and they do not deviate from their paths, right? They do not crowd each other. Uh, they do not crowd each other. Each one marches in his path. When they burst through the defenses, weapons, they do not break ranks, right? So when they come up when they break through this barrier, but then they gonna come in the perimeter of this golden dome, they are not gonna break rank. They will not be wounded, right? Meaning they're not. It's not gonna stop it. So even though you know they're trying to Donald Trump want to create this golden missile defense system, it's not gonna have any effect on these missiles. They're gonna continue in their path and hit their mark, hit their target, intended target. Um, it says, as I'm going back to this article, it says, as a result, the Pentagon will prioritize President. As a result, the Pentagon will prioritize President Donald Trump's planned Golden Dome missile defense system, missile defense shield, with a focus on defeating large missile barrages, right, and other advanced aerial attacks, while also hardening military and key civilian infrastructure against cyber strikes, right? So barrages of missiles. When these missiles will be shot off, that golden dome is not going to have any effect on them. It says never, the United States should never, will never be left vulnerable to nuclear blackmail. The strategy says, as it calls for continued modernization of the nation's nuclear deterrent, right? It says what? We'll never be left vulnerable to nuclear blackmail. What is it talking about? Nuclear blackmail. So, I think there was, gotta go back and look. They were saying that that the treaty that America had with Russia, that that missile don't shoot, has been broken or something like that. That treaty is no longer in effect. Just talking about nuclear blackmail. After years of focusing on a potential conflict with China in the Indo-Pacific, the strategy making clear the Pentagon will seek what it calls a stable peace with Beijing, including expanded military to military communication. Right? It says we will also be clear-eyed and realistic about the speed, scale, and quality of China's historic military buildup. The document says our goal is simple: to prevent anyone, including China, from being able to dominate us or our allies. Right? It says Pentagon planners uh, Pentagon planners argue deterrence will rely less on confrontation and more on denying China the ability to win a fight outright, particularly in the West Pacific, by blocking attempts to dominate U.S. allies or control key maritime routes. But China is not open. But China is not the only concern. The strategy warns the United States could face multiple crises at the same time, with adversaries acting together or exploiting moments of distraction, um, raising the risk that conflicts overseas could overlap and reach our homeland early. Right. So, yeah, these nations going to gather. The scripture tell you, gather ye nations together and come against her. Right. That's why that's let me see, get that. See this. Yeah, Isaiah 13. It's talking about Babylon. Isaiah 13. It says the noise of a multitude in the mountains. I'm gonna start at verse 1. Isaiah 13 and 1. It says the burden of Babylon, which Isaiah, the son of Amos, did see, says, lift up ye a banner, lift ye up a banner upon the high mountains, exalt the voice unto them, shake the hand that they may go unto the gates of the nobles, right? So, that's the Bible being preached, and these elites hear what's going on, right? It says, I have commanded my sanctified ones, I have also called my mighty ones for my anger, even them that rejoice in my highness, right? It's talking about these missiles, including these missiles, right? The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gather together. The Lord Yahawah hosts mustered the host of the battle, right? They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord Yahawah, and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. Right. So that's these missiles. Right. The noise of a noise of a multitude of mountains, like as a great people. Same thing I read out of Isaiah chapter 2. I mean, Joel chapter 2. The noise of a great people, right? Those missiles. And that's why these nations are gathered together. I think there was another one. Might be, it might be in Obadiah. Yeah, Obadiah 1 and 1, it says the vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord God, Yahawah bahasham Yahawahshi, concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from the Lord Yahawah. An ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Let us rise up against her in battle, right? Jeremiah 49 and 14, it says, I have heard a rumor from the Lord Yahawah. An ambassador is sent unto the heathen, saying, gather ye together and come against her and rise up to the battle, right? So, like it says in the article, they think, it says the strategy warns, this paragraph, it says the strategy warns the United States could face multiple crises at the same time with adversaries acting together, right? These heathens going to rise together against America, and or exploiting moments of distraction, raising the risk that conflict overseas could overlap and reach the homeland early. It says to manage that risk, the Pentagon is pressing allies to shoulder more of the burden. The strategy calls on European and Indo-Pacific partners to drastically increase defense spending, freeing U.S. forces to focus on homeland defense and more dangerous threats. Right? It says the document also sharpens the Pentagon's focus closer to home, threatening border security, drug trafficking, and access to key terrain as core military missions. It calls for readiness to take decisive action against narco-terrorist groups and to protect strategic locations, including the Panama Canal and Greenland. It says distance. The strategy argues is no longer a shield. It says distance is no longer a shield, right? Distance, the strategy argues, is no longer a shield. Long range missiles, cyber weapons, and drones now allow adversaries to reach the United States directly, compressing warning times and raising the risk that future wars could hit America's soil early. It says to keep pace, the Pentagon calls for a rapid build in United States defense industrial base, warning that America must be able to produce weapons and equipment at scale if hopes to deter or survive a prolonged fight. It says the strategy describes Russia as a serious but declining threat, warning Moscow still poses dangers through its nuclear arsenal and space, and undersea capabilities. Even as the Pentagon argues Europe is now capable of taking the lead in its own defense. Right? So, let's see how far I must. No, it shouldn't be too long. This article should be almost. I should be almost done with it. It says Russia will remain a persistent but manageable threat to NATO's eastern members for a foreseeable future. For the foreseeable future, the document says, noting Russia continues to modernize the world's largest nuclear arsenal. It says the strategy makes clear Washington experts. The strategy makes clear Washington expects NATO allies to shoulder far more responsibility, arguing Europe's economic and military potential far outpace Russia's if allies invest accordingly. On Iran, the Pentagon paints a picture of a regime weakened by recent U.S. and Israeli military action, but still dangerous and unpredictable. It says Iran's regime is weaker and more vulnerable than it has been in decades. The strategy says, while warning Iran's leaders have left open the possibility that they will try again to obtain a nuclear weapon, right? So that's why these devil's arguments to all these brown countries, they can get a nuclear weapon, you know. Says the document stresses to Tehran's continued hostility towards the United States and Israel, noting Iran has the blood of Americans on its hands, and emphasizes empowering allies, particularly Israel and U.S. partners, particularly Israel and U.S. partners in the Gulf, to deter Iran and respond decisively if American threats are threatened, if American interests are threatened. It says Iran regularly touts its ballistic missile arsenal as a central pillar of its deterrent and regular retaliatory strategy showcasing new medium range and hypersonic systems and warning they can strike regional rivals and U.S. interests in the Middle East. It says China, meanwhile, has pushed back strongly against the U.S. Golden Dome missile defense initiatives, accusing Washington of undermining global strategic stability and risking weaponization of outer space, right? So yeah, these countries going to be gathered together, you know, and all this thing, all you know, with this with Greenland, all this strife and contention with America trying to take over Greenland with the European Union, and they calling Trump, um, you know, he's a bully and he's an international gangster. That's not looking too favorable with the allies of America, the European Union, the European countries. So yeah, this place is going to be hit with nuclear missiles, and nuclear missiles does exist, you know, because that's, you know, this article right here basically gave you a warning that the threat of of war coming to the shores of America, meaning the use of nuclear weapons and other conventional weapons are possible and heightened. The threat is heightened, and we understand according to the Bible that's exactly what's going to happen. ICBM nuclear missiles are going to hit America. So I'm going to go ahead and end it off there, off right there, and I hope it's edifying to the elect. I'm going to say, call her like Yahawah, bahasham, Yahawahshi, bahasham, Rawchaa Qadash, shalom. Till the next time, Yahawah, which means Lord willing, and Yahawah.